Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you've ever dealt with an injury, you know how exciting it can be when the doctor finally tells you you're discharged and ready to go on your own. But here's the thing they don't really tell you. Just because you're discharged and ready to get back on your own doesn't mean that you're ready to go back full speed. Here at Movement-Based Therapy, I help remote workers as well as high performers bridge that gap, helping you build mobility, strength, and resiliency after your recovery. So in today's video, I wanted to cover the top 5 mistakes I see people do after recovering from an injury. And more importantly, how to fix them so you can get back to what you enjoy doing without setbacks. So here we go. Mistake number 1 is getting back into training way too fast. Just because the doctor says you're fine and just because your physio says you're discharged, ready to go back to work full duty and back to the things you love, again, doesn't necessarily mean that you're fully ready to go back to 100%. More oftentimes than not, when you're discharged from physio, they're getting you back to something that's called ADLs, or activities of daily living. This just basically means that you're able to live a standard of life for most people. Things like walking up and down stairs, and maybe even that's a little bit too risky. Things such as carrying groceries, driving and commuting, things that you would think an everyday person would be able to do is essentially that bare standard that you get to. Sometimes maybe we have individuals that are very active, that are performers, that want to do things such as run marathons or do Spartans or are really just into health and fitness. And when they get that discharge from their physio and from their doctor, they don't quite feel ready to get back to that full function. But they say, well, the doctor said I'm fine, so I'm just going to go at it anyway. They do it, and then they end up running into another obstacle, they end up re-aggravating an injury, or they end up back in the physio's office because they did too much too soon. What we really need to be thinking about is taking a phased approach. That is finding the progression that is most suitable as that next step. They're all steps of progression, and if we think about ADLs and something such as running a marathon, there may be this functional gap that we have. What is going to be the best strategy to get me from here to here? Think about what we're doing with physio or PT, or maybe we did our own home rehab. Doctor said that, okay, you're within a normative range of motion. Now you can get back to doing whatever it is you're doing. In this instance, we're at this, new baseline, because after an injury, oftentimes we're not able to get back to 100%, but arguably, I like to say that we can incorporate strategies that make us feel like we were better than before. More or less, it's just having a better awareness of the things we were neglecting and paying more attention to that so that we become more well-rounded. So this to say is when we get discharged from a physio, we're at this new baseline, and now we have this standard of where we want to go, which is maybe, let's just say in this example, running a marathon. So what do we need to do to fill in this gap? Be things like tempo work, more single leg work, stability, hip stability and mobility. How are we moving up and down the kinetic chain? How does our ankle move? Do we feel stiff or inhibited? We try to do certain movements. These are things we want to be paying attention to. Other things we can do, we can modulate our rep scheme. Are we doing a regular dynamic rep? Are we doing a slow and controlled tempo rep? Are we focusing on the eccentric phase where we know that we're creating the most strain on tissue, but we can create the most resiliency and adaptability? Are we incorporating therapeutic modalities such as normatic or intermittent compression, things such as pulsed electrical magnetic field therapy or red light therapy? These modalities can help with mitochondria stimulation, getting the cells more energy, which can in turn help us recover, even if it's hours faster, even if it's a day faster. The elite setting, this day can be the difference between a competition and having to be disqualified because we weren't able to attend. So these are different things we want to be thinking about. Really, where are we at when we're discharged? What is our goal? And how can we get ourselves back to that goal in an incremental way that creates adaptability, resiliency, and doesn't set us back from a re-aggravation, re-trigger, or re-injury? Next thing that we got to be thinking about is, are we addressing the mobility work? Now, let's just say in the instance of a knee injury, we've tore our ACL, we've gotten the reconstruction, and now we're back to discharge status. What does the status of our hip and our low back look like? I'm looking up the chain one joint. So hip, low back. What does the status of our ankle look like? Were we doing sufficient mobilizations when we talk about these structures? Or are they stiff and inhibited? If they are, now we end up creating a compensation where, hey, I don't have enough slack in my right ankle, so I'm gonna make up with it on my left ankle and now overcompensate that side. And Quite often, time and time again, what I've heard in the clinic is someone who experiences an injury, they end up rehabbing it themselves, and then they come and say, oh, you know, actually, my right knee was the knee that was bugging me, but it's not really bugging me anymore. Now it's my left knee. I bring up this idea and concept of compensating with the other side, and essentially the body just trying to figure out, you know, where can we navigate this goal or this task that we got to do, something like walking upstairs. Well, I don't have enough slack on my right side, so I'm going to make up for it on the left side. The nervous system adapts, and then now we have this compensation where now we're favoring the left side over using the left side, and now we have increased wear and tear and overcompensation through the left side, where it's a matter of time before we feel some sort of aggravation or trigger. So all this to say is, when it comes to things like mobility, this is like what I was saying in concept number one, is we become more well-rounded because when we're injured and we're discharged, use smart techniques in our rehabilitation process, we can address things that we were maybe neglecting before. Things like mobility, things like unilateral or single-sided stability, even passive range of motion where we're talking about flexibility now. We need to have sufficient range of motion based on whatever the task we're doing. So if I'm an Olympic weightlifter and I need to do a heavy clean and jerk, I need to make sure that yes, I have shoulder stability as well as mobility. Are my lats inhibited, and are my lats the thing that's restricting my shoulder? If so, I need to address that tissue. Can I get into a proper split squat position to maintain that split jerk if I'm a split jerker? If I'm a squat jerker, do I have that range of motion in the shoulders and in the hips? These are things you got to be thinking about. And again, it's going to be task dependent. So it doesn't have to be Olympic weightlifting. It can be cycling, it can be swimming, it can be running. It can just be, I want to be able to spend time with my kids out back and pick up my daughter and not have to feel my back tweak. These are things we got to be thinking about. And when we're coming out of the tail end of that rehab process, what is it that we're doing to get ourselves back to that new baseline? And are we filling in that functional gap? I have this thing that I want to do and I'm here. How can I meet myself and fill this gap to get up to this goal that I have now that I have been discharged? In most instances, once you're discharged from doctor and PT, they loosen the reins and say you're on your own. So I've seen time and time again, individuals try to find that strategy to get them to the goal, only to end up with a setback because they were re-injured, because they didn't have that education of how to get them to that goal of what they were trying. So if this is you, know that it's not the end, and know that there are resources out there to help you get back to what that goal is. One of those resources is, you can feel free to get in contact with me. Visit Sheldon Movement-Based Therapy. You can get in touch with me, leave a comment below. I promise to read all the comments, and I will give you some at least level of general feedback that can maybe be a step forward. If this is you and you're currently with a physio or with a physical therapist, this can be something that you think about at your next appointment, is ask them, hey, what is something that I should be doing when I'm discharged from PT? Because I want to get back to running marathons. And I feel that when we're done, because we only have X amount of sessions left, what are some techniques that I can do to help glide me in a progressive manner back to that goal where I'm not encountering any setbacks? These are things that you want to be thinking about. That was mistake number 2. So now going on to mistake number 3, something that individuals can end up doing is over-relying on passive modalities. Things like ice and stim, things like heat, things like ultrasound, things like electrical magnetic field therapy. They all have their time and place, and they all have their benefits and how they can help you recover. But there can be an over-reliance on these modalities. Now we're actually backpedaling away from our goal. Our goal involves us to be active. And if we're relying on a piece of machinery to do the work for us, that's not quite how it works. In the example of pickleball, if I wanted to get back to pickleball and I had this awesome stim device, I can put the stim device on me all I wanted. It's not going to necessarily make me a better pickleball player. What is going to make me a better pickleball player is the skill acquisition. Am I working on the court? Am I working on speed and agility, hand-eye coordination? Am I working on my lobs, my serves? Am I working on the general skill of the game? The only way I can work on that stuff is by being in the element of pickleball, not by just relying on a machine. So something to think about is, if you have a modality or if you have a specific tool that you find benefits you, not telling you to turn away from it, just use it as a small piece of the pie. Because the bigger piece here is what you do. Our body adapts and is very resilient and can accommodate based off the stresses we put on it. We want to find that balance where we're not overstressing, overtraining, or overdoing something where we end up back in the hole. We want to have that balance where we have a nice balance of strength training, resiliency, adaptability, everything physical that we're doing, and then the recovery aspect. So if we are able to balance and navigate that in a safe and effective manner, we can see the most progress and we can understand really where that modality fits in the grand scheme of things. Mistake number 4 is skipping the small stuff. People come up to me all the time and they say, Sheldon, what should I be doing for my physical training? And the first question I typically ask them is, well, what's your sleep like? Or what is your nutrition like? And the answer is never really good. So we want to make sure that we're not just skipping on the small stuff, because the small stuff is really going to be the thing that sets the foundation for us to gain higher level acquisition of skills or whatever it is we're working towards. Think about it like this. If I'm training for a marathon, you have multiple blocks of training. And if we're neglecting the small stuff, things like ensuring we're getting adequate sleep, things like maintaining our stress levels, things like ensuring that we're getting proper nutrition day in and day out. These are going to be the things that chip and deteriorate our training. These are going to be the things more oftentimes than not that end up leading to injury. If we're not getting proper sleep, if we're not getting proper nutrition, we're not fueling our body right. Our body doesn't have the fuel it needs to accomplish said goal. Think about it like a car. You can't get to your destination without the proper gas. In that same nature, you can't get to your proper destination without maintaining the vehicle. Our body is very much that same vehicle, only in a very visceral form. So how are we sleeping? If we're not sleeping well, it's going to lead to things like cognitive impairment, brain fog. In the most worst of cases, we can have things like early onset dementia, Alzheimer's. Cognitive impairment overall is going to be inhibited by 3 contributing factors: sleep, nutrition, and hydration. So we got to be mindful of all those little things that we do to get us to our goal. Another thing as well, when we think about physical training, is how are we balancing the recovery work? Train hard, recover harder is the mantra here. Especially as you get older, you want to make sure that your body's systems are facilitating one another. How is our lymphatic system working? Are we eating proper to facilitate proper fluid dynamics? If we're not, then we're going to see a hindrance or a stifling of our progress. So be mindful to pay attention to not skip the small stuff. And mistake number 5, arguably one of the biggest ones of all, is forgetting about consistency. This is a long game. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Even if you're a sprinter, the training is a long-term block to get you to even shave off tenths of a second at the elite level. So we want to make sure that the biggest thing that we do is not shift that routine. If we do need to shift the routine, we accommodate our training and still get it in. If we're not able to complete the entire training, we are still doing some form of motion lotion, because motion is lotion. We got to be moving around. The less we move around, the more stiff we get, the more we feel discomfort, the more we start to feel a triggering aggravation, wherever the case might be. So we have to ensure that we're being consistent with our training. We're not skipping the small things. We're not overdoing the things that we need to be doing. We're not neglecting the things that we should be doing and just pushing it off to a later date, because we all know later comes and it just becomes more later. And those are the top 5 mistakes that I see people commonly make after recovering from an injury. Again, just to recap, the 5 things were doing too much too soon, relying too much on passive modalities or things that aren't actually going to make an effect in your training, neglecting the mobility work, skipping the small stuff, and staying consistent. As long as you're able to address those 5 concepts, you will see a significant difference in your recovery process back from an injury. If you avoid those traps, you'll not only recover, you'll come back stronger and more resilient than before. So thank you for watching the video all the way through. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and be sure to turn the notification bells on so you know when the next video comes up. In addition to this, I'm a little curious and I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments below. What area out of these 5 would you say is something maybe you end up making a mistake of? As I'll be sure to read these comments and give you some feedback. Not only that, the comments below really help me craft my content strategy. And if there's something of value that maybe I can talk to, I will definitely be creating content on that as well. So I do appreciate the engagement. Thank you again for checking out my channel, for the likes and subscriptions. I could not thank you enough for all the support. So thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.